What is good, dudes? Lady dudes, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I'm doing a different video, possibly a series. I may, start doing semi-consistently. I mean, based on what it is, I can't really do it insanely consistently, but pretty much the idea of this little series is that I want to start every time like a new deck comes out, or maybe like support that completely changes a deck all over. Um, Doing like a series where I pretty much just talk about where I expect this deck to be competitively. So like what tier it falls into, how well it can compete with where the current game is and where the game will be. Just that kind of stuff, because it's hard, because like you can read cards individually, but that's like super theory, and I mean that's I guess what this is too, me reading the cards, but also looking at the OCG. And if you wanted to, you could look at the OCG and literally see how much a deck tops and if it's relevant or whatever, but not a lot of people do, and I don't keep up with the OCG proficiently, but I keep up enough to where I see, certain decks top here and there, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that deck was good enough to top, and now I know it is. So the OCG also does a lot of small tournaments, so it's like kind of hard to gauge that also, relative to our metagame. But yeah, and it may not, and like I said, it may not be completely new archetypes. Like Infinity Chase is the one I'm doing today, but when like Dark Neo Storm comes out, if this does well, and I really want to do one, then I may do one for like Destiny Heroes, because the whole Destiny Hero deck is going to change completely, almost a complete overhaul. You're going to see like a completely new extra deck, not completely new, but like a very, very new extra deck with multiple new cards in it. You're going to see new power cards in the main deck that were not there previously, and yeah. So today, at least, we're talking about Infinity Chasers and where these decks stand to be, on release, and at least right now, and also we'll look at the future too, because we do have some things to talk about there. So let's just start one by one, and we'll start with probably the one that I expect to be the least competitive right out the gate, at least, which is Infinitrax. So Infinitrax is pretty much an Earth Machine archetype that's based around making strong XZs and Link monsters to win the game. Problem is, it's very slow. It doesn't have enough starter cards, so you could have hands where you don't open any starter cards. You could have hands where you open a bunch, but they don't really spam the board like that. So even if you open 5 starter cards, you usually would only be able to use 1 or 2 like that. This is like probably the most rogue out of the 3, like rogue. At least a pure version. And what's interesting here, and what makes some of these decks, what's going to make some of these decks hard to kind of place into categories like this, is that a deck like this has actually like pretty solid synergy with like rank 10 trains. There are some really powerful cards and trains that work really well in this deck. You have some level 5 machines, so that could work with Cyber Dragons possibly. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked too much into that. But all these machine decks, you look at ABCs, Cyber Dragon, rank 10 trains. I feel like I'm missing one, obvious one that I can't think of right now. But there's a whole line of these machine type archetypes, like yugioh. If they ever get like a Link monster that's like really powerful, this could be something specifically good, especially because they're Earth machines. So that's hard to gauge too, how those decks would end up being, and also even judging like what deck is that really? Is it a yugioh deck featuring Infinitrax cards, or is it like an actual mixture? Like, is it literally half and half, or is it like mostly yugioh with a couple Infinitrax cards because those few really work well? Something like that. It's hard to gauge, but this one is really tough. It's just super slow. You have a Link 1 and a Link 3. The Link 1 is good for mobility in the deck, but the Link 3 is like a win condition. It's very powerful. You can get it on the field, but you need to use 3 XZs monsters to summon it, I believe. That's its Link materials, and that's brutal, because that's like not impossible, but damn near close to impossible of ever getting that on the field. So this deck, I don't really expect to see it topping too much. Maybe if we do see it top at all, it'll probably be a deck that's not actually Infinitrax, but uses some Infinitrax cards because they do have specific synergy in there, because there are some ones that are decent. Like Anchor Drill. I mean, this is like one of the staple cards, one of the flagship cards for the archetype. Just on normal summon, you especially summon an Earth Machine from your hand. So right there, that already has synergy with a couple of the decks I already talked about. So pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I just think too slow. Can't do it. Can't do what they want to do fast enough, and the monsters are not oppressive enough to scare your opponent either, because they need the battle phase to do stuff, which is never as reliable as you'd wish. So Infinitrax, deep rogue. Tier 4, I'd probably put them in currently. Then we'll look at Evil Eye. So this is like, the next two are the two fan favorites, and they made them better than I think they made Infinitrax on purpose, because they are fan favorites. So you got to make those better, more playable, to match the amount of people that are going to want to play it. But Evil Eye is a control-based strategy where pretty much you have one equipped spell called the Evil Eye of Selene, and this is your main monster, Serziel, and then a bunch of stun cards. You have a couple trap cards, a couple spell cards that work mainly if Selene is on the field. They say, a lot of them say, like, if you have an Evil Eye monster, you can do this, but if you also have Selene, the equipped spell, on the field, you can do an additional effect, which gives them a buff, kind of like Sky Strikers, where if you met the requirement of having 3 spells engraved, they would give you an additional effect to draw a card, to pop an extra card, to steal a monster instead of just negating it, that kind of stuff. So the biggest flaw for this deck, and I actually think this deck is decent because it has like the powerful field spell that searches the Serziel, so you have like 8 copies of Serziel, so, and you kind of need him to play because he's your main like he's like your Stratos for the deck. On normal, someone will search you pretty much Selene, unless you already have it. You can search another stun card, any Evil Eye card. So it's a decent engine. It's kind of like Trickstar engine with the searching monster and the searching field spell. But the biggest problem is just the frailness of the deck, is that if your opponent opens like Twin Twisters, like, it's gonna be brutal, because if they can get Selene off the field, your cards don't do much, like, at all. If they can like erase it off the field immediately, the rest of your deck doesn't really do much, because like you look at Sky Strikers, if they don't put 3 spells engraved for their cards to get the double effects, their cards are not that impactful. I mean, I guess like Windwaker's still just like a quick negate, which is okay, but like not crazy. It's like, it's pretty much Forbidden Chalice at that point, which is an okay card, but not amazing by today's standards. Like Afterburners is just a 1-for-1 with any monster. What else? Engage is still a really powerful search card, but you don't get the plus. It's just a 1-for-1. It's not an actual plus in that situation. So, like, you see what I'm saying, is that, like, the deck is, like, not good if you don't get the plus effects. And the same thing here. If your opponent's able to get rid of Selene, you're going to be in a tough spot. And Selene does get itself back to hand, but it's slow. You're not going to be able to get it back to hand until next turn. And all it takes is one form of quick removal to just kind of put Selene down and then put you in an awkward position. I think this deck is probably like tier 3. I kind of liken this deck to almost like Ninjas. You know, you have decent starter cards, like Ninjas have like Hanzo and Upstart Golden Ninja, but it's frail, like weak to hand traps. Same thing with this deck. Your field spells weak to hand traps. Serziel, if it gets hand trapped and you didn't open Selene, you kind of need Selene. So if he gets hand trapped, like, you're just a sitting duck, you're probably just going to set 3 or 4 back row and hope that your 1600 beater with a couple of back row is going to be enough to get it done. So it has those same weakness of frailness. If you can get there, if you can set up the Selene and your opponent doesn't have the back row removal immediately, if they need to go into like Phoenix to do it, you can just stop them going into Phoenix. You're going to negate the monster effect. You have ways to do all these things, so it's not a big deal. But also, it's just so hit or miss. It's so, you're there or you're not, and that's the unfortunate part about it. It just hurts the consistency of the deck. So here I'd probably put it in tier 3. It's just not consistent enough to be tier 2. I think it's powerful enough. I think if you get the board set up that you're looking for, I think the deck's pretty powerful if you're able to get there. But that's always the problem, is getting there. So I put this deck in tier 3. And I wouldn't be surprised if some dedicated fans of the deck were able to go to a regional and get this to the top. But I don't see this topping a YCS with the support they have now. We'll see if they get future support. But for right now, I just don't see it happening. They would need like a whole new level of like consistency / protection. It's like the consistency is there because you have the the small engine with the field spell and Serziel, that you have the small engine. The engine's not the problem. The consistency flaw is the consistency in protecting your board, because it is frail to break sometimes if they have the right stuff to break it down. And they're going to be, every player is going to be siding in the same stuff. They're going to side in their Twin Twisters. They're going to side in maybe Red Reboot, because they know you're going to set some back row and tell you to dare you to stop them. And also life points can be a problem in this deck, because Selene does burn you every time you activate an Evil Eye monster effect. So yeah, tier 3, that's where I see Evil Eyes. Then the last deck here, which is probably, it's a toss-up between this and Evil Eye in terms of fan favorites for this deck build pack, and there always is a fan favorite for the deck build packs. You get 3 archetypes. Like, there's going to be ones that are liked more than others. Hidden Summoners, by far and away, Prank Kids blew away Mayakashi's and Nephthys. Fan favorites and competitive viability. But here we have Witchcrafters. This is a spellcaster-based archetype where you pretty much have big boss monster Witchcrafters, and you have small engine tag out kind of Witchcrafter monsters. So the smaller ones pretty much all say, like, as a quick effect, which is nice, you can discard any spell and then tribute themselves, then discard the spell to special summon a Witchcrafter monster straight from the deck as with a different name. So you can just pull out the big boss monsters, which is nice, but also that can be ashed. It can't be Veilered or Veiler, Ogred, or Impermanence, a lot of those things. So, like, it really is mostly just Ash that actually hits this. Also, like, Called by the Grave is like a hard counter to this. I've played a couple Witchcrafter decks online, and Called by the Grave is brutal, because you pay cost by tributing them, and then they're in the graveyard, so you can chain Called by the Grave, banish them, and they don't even get the special summon. So they literally went -2, and that's brutal. They do have a nice recursion effect. All the spells essentially say, on the end of your turn, if you didn't activate their effects this turn, you will add them back to hand, or set some of, or place some of them back to the field. So that's really nice, is that the longer the duel goes on, it just feels like you're drawing more than one card a turn. It almost just feels like that in the later turns. Early turns, from turn 1 and 2, you're not really getting those effects really, so it doesn't feel as apparent. But later on in the duel, if it is a grindier duel, and that's where this deck really thrives. If you're able to kind of draw out a longer duel with your opponent, you're going to have a good chance to just out-resource them, because you do have some decent removal cards and stuff like that that just kind of can hopefully get you out of any pickle, any pinch, get rid of any problem cards your opponent currently has. But yeah, the engine's pretty decent. I think the biggest problem for this deck is that the monsters are in the main deck. One of my biggest problems with this deck that literally could have made this like actually like possibly a meta deck is if they put the boss monsters in the extra deck and made them like Thunder Dragon fusions. Like how in Thunder Dragons, as long as you activated a whatever Thunder effect from hand, you could just tag out a Thunder monster on board for Colossus, and then if you use a fusion, if you use a Colossus, you can make a Titan. Didn't have to work exactly like that, but at least the way Colossus works, where you can tag them out to just summon Colossus. You don't have to have 2 on field or anything. Like, discard a spell and tribute 1, summon Colossus. It can't be Ash because you're not special summoning from deck. If it's a quick effect, it still can't be Veilered, Impermanence, Ogred, any of that stuff. But I do think it does have, that would be like so much more powerful. You're not playing the bricks. They brick so bad, the big ones, because you're probably playing around 3 of the big ones. That's like a 3 of that you never want to see, which is always bad. You never want that consistency wise for a deck you're playing. But the deck does still do some interesting things. And one thing that is super interesting to note is that we already have 1 card confirmed for future support, Golem Ares, which is almost like a hand trap. If your opponent targets you or attacks you, you can just like special summon it and bounce a card to hand, I think, if I'm remembering its effect correctly. So that's actually pretty good. They do have consistency cards like the Rhoda card they had, which is pretty nice, and a card specials from graves. You could literally tribute 1, and even if it does get Ash, so you don't get the special summon, you can just revive it, do it again if you have another spell. Actually, you can't do it again because they're hard most returns, but you can at least special summon it and then on your opponent's turn do it. So that still works. I think this deck has potential. I just think they did it wrong I think if they had made those extra deck monsters, if they made the boss monsters extra deck monsters like Thunder Dragon, Colossus, oh, this archetype would actually be so clean. But it struggles with the consistency aspect of it, and also power. It struggles with power because a lot of times you just end up putting, even if you do resolve your stuff, you just end up with like one boss monster, and you're like discarding a spell to pop a card, or discarding a spell to negate your opponent's board. And it's like, it's decent. It would be decent with other interruptions, but a lot of times you don't have other interruptions. That's your only interruption, and as long as your opponent can play through one interruption like that and get over your beat stick, you lose. So, yeah, but we'll see. We almost have a confirmation with that we're going to get multiple other support cards other than Golem Ares, or Ares, whatever the new card's called, or whatever you want to call it. Hopefully, they are going to push this deck to the new level, because this is obviously, of the three, this and Evil Eyes, these were designed to be fan favorites. You can tell when Konami's like trying to force a deck to be loved, and they don't even have to. They just know the formula. So, I would not be surprised if they try to do this, kind of like Sky Striker, where because it's the cute girl archetype, you know, not only girls are going to love this, but guys are going to love this too. And so why not make it better? Because like people are just going to be upset if you just make it poo. So hopefully the support is good enough there. I think this deck kind of sits around where Evil Eye is now. Struggles with power a little bit, struggles with consistency a little bit with Ash. Ash hurts so bad. But I do think the deck does do some things, and it can grind really well. And this is not necessarily a crazy OTK format. So if you're able to at least put a monster board, protect yourself every turn, and just grind it out, you can definitely steal some wins from certain decks, which is really cool. So tier 3-ish, I think Evil Eye is probably the best deck out of the three so far, at least right now. So maybe you could say 3.5. I could say 3, 3.5, and 4 for these. For Evil Eyes 3, 3.5 for Witchcrafters, and 4 for Infinitrack, but we'll see in the future. I mean, if we already have Witchcraft stuff confirmed, we could easily see Evil Eye and Infinitrack stuff get confirmed. Because like, how soon after what is the other one? What was the last one? Hidden Summoners, did we get like confirmation that Roxy's was coming out? Pretty soon. It didn't take long for us to at least get news about it. So yeah, we'll see where we go from there, but that's where I think these decks stand right now. And let me know. I mean, this is a longer video because we had 3 archetypes to cover, but maybe in the future, if like a new set drops that has like 1 or 2, it'll be shorter videos, and I could just give you my quick thoughts on where stuff lands and where they are relative to the rest of the game right now. So guys, if you enjoyed this video and you thought it was a good idea and I should keep it up, then, you know, watch it, like it, leave a comment if you want. I know when I say leave a comment, I don't get a ton of comments, but I can read just based off of views and likes and stuff. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, sub up to the channel for more stuff from me in the future. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.